So just a reminder, we have reposted the agenda, the second updated agenda, in the side chat bar. And I'm now going to invite Georgia into the discussion, who will be talking about empowerment training for women. So can we unmute Georgia, please?
Hello, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me all right, Dawn?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for inviting me to this Zoom meeting today. Really honoured to be here. So my background is I've been working for more than 25 years in the international development sector, mostly working on UK aid programmes overseas, particularly focusing on gender equality and women's health, and particularly sexual reproductive health, and also on women's economic empowerment. And I will talk a little bit about training, but I wanted to talk a bit more widely, first of all, about women in leadership, and then a bit about how health relates to the climate and ecological emergency globally, and how this is relevant for us right now. So first of all, there's been, I don't know if you've seen, there's been a lot of press about how women leaders, national leaders, are performing much better in this crisis. I don't know whether it's just certain newspapers are publishing this, but it's quite striking. And I mean, I don't normally like to say, you know, women are better at this or men are better at that, because it just perpetuates a feeling that we're born in a certain way, which is just not the case. But my feeling is that could it be something to do with the gender norms within which we grow up, and that maybe women are more likely to listen to scientific advice because they don't think of themselves as the experts in everything. And there is research showing that women typically will underestimate their skills and expertise, whereas men will overestimate their skills and expertise. And also women quite often attribute their success to their teams rather than try and blow their own trumpet. So it's quite an interesting aspect of this. So okay, maybe we've got women working better in leadership, maybe they're responding better in this. But also 70% of the global health workforce are women. And yet much of health leadership and political leadership are, particularly in the northern countries, are run by white men. So I would love us to get more involved in proposing and supporting women in leadership. We know that, as I said, it's not just about being a man or a woman, it's about diversity in decision making. When we have diversity in decision making, we make better decisions. We have more viewpoints, people coming from different viewpoints, we have more challenge, and this leads to better creativity. And yet, important sections of our community are still systematically excluded. Another example of how women in decision making leads to well, we might say better decision. What do you mean by better? But in some cases, it's more investment in social sectors and healthcare. So in Rwanda, quite a long time ago, they made a decision to have 50% of parliamentarians should be women. And after that, there was a lot more investment went into the social sectors and much more care taken to get social outcomes. So this is something that does have evidence globally. And then on a global arena, we're finding that here we are, we're really concerned, obviously, and I'm just as concerned as everyone else about these deaths from an infectious disease. And yet in the global south, infections from, infectious diseases are rampant, and there's high numbers of deaths, and there are so many preventable deaths. So 5.3 million children died in 2018. Over half of those were preventable, and the vast majority of those were in low-income countries. In Nigeria, for example, 866,000 children under 5 died in 2018. Globally, 815 million people suffer from undernutrition. So, and you know, we thought that poverty reduction and the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, now the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, this would lead to a decrease in these kinds of deaths. But, you know, actually, this is becoming more severe, and it's affecting us more. So this is why we're noticing suddenly. But this has been affecting people in the Global South for a long time. And what's affecting people more and what's getting worse is because of the climate and ecological emergency. So in this country, there are 25,000 deaths attributed to air pollution in the UK per year. It's 25,000 deaths per year. From the WHO recently issued a report saying that 250,000 additional deaths every year are predicted from 2030 to 2050 because of climate and ecological related issues, which will lead to malnutrition, higher rates of malaria, heat stress, diarrhea, etc. A lot of these issues that we see now already in tropical and subtropical regions, and deaths from heat and undernutrition are happening now. So getting back to what the issue of leadership and women and diversity in leadership, to get out of this crisis, we need to recognize some of these inequalities, and we need to have the right voices in leadership. And also, I think we need to start looking at feminist economics. There's so many fantastic books out there at the moment which is changing the economic agenda. We need to be proposing those more. And the feminist economics interrogates power dynamics and people's relative access to and use of wealth and resources. So we could be making more of that, and we could be making more of promoting women in leadership and promoting more diverse voices generally. And I think that's it from me. I've nearly spoken for 10 minutes. Did you want me to speak more about some of the work we've been doing on women's economic empowerment?
Absolutely, if you could. And also to remind people that the next speaker, Andrea, is talking about the 50-50 in Parliament campaign, so that leads nicely into it. But if we can have a background about what you've actually been doing with the empowerment training, that would be useful. Yeah, okay. So I train people in aid organisations to learn more about women's economic empowerment particularly, but also women's empowerment within programs. And one of the programs I've been working with for the past 5 years is in the health sector in northern Nigeria, and it is to train female health workers. And typically they don't, women in northern Nigeria, young women don't get to tertiary education. They can't become nurses and midwives, let alone doctors, because they don't have a high enough level of education, particularly in rural areas, not good enough quality, but also there's high levels of exclusion and social norms that mean women can't, it's not acceptable for women to be working outside of the home. So within that, there's been a huge focus on encouraging young women to apply, giving them top-up education, but also working with men leaders in communities to make sure that they understand how important it is that women become health workers and that they can come back to these communities and then save women's lives. In some of the communities where we're working, it's the first time they've had a midwife in that community, and it's immediately resulting in women and children's lives being saved. So this is the kind of way that you might mainstream a focus on gender equality within a program. But also at the moment with the EU, I've been working on training people within the EU offices all over the world to understand what women's economic empowerment is and how they can use those concepts within programs. And typically it's not just about women earning an income and having a job, which is, one of the first steps and really important, but it's also about how women are able to make decisions within the home, within their communities, and linking with this aspect of
violence against women and domestic violence, you know, that's a huge barrier to women earning an income and making decisions in the household and communities. And it's also a massive cost to them and their families and their communities if they can't get to work, or if there's high levels of absenteeism, even if they do have a job, and it's a huge cost to the health service as well. So so that's the kind of work that I do, is raising people's awareness of that and giving them some of the tools where they can work on these issues.
So do we have any questions on that particular issue to Georgia, please? Is it possible to discuss some of how the applications of the training could be incorporated into things that we do within our own Green Party Women group? Would you be interested in facilitating some kind of training with our own members, perhaps? Is that something that we could organise?
Yeah, I'd be really interested in that. I have done training with so one research organisation, there were about 120 people, and we trained a group of us trained them in groups of 10, doing workshops, day-long workshops. I mean, that was quite in depth, but it was really the idea was to change the whole culture within the organisation, to start conversations, because it's not a matter of, oh yeah, I'm trained, I know that now. It's all about changing social norms and understanding and having conversations with each other that are open and informed and listening to each other. So there's, those kinds of skills as well.
We've got a question in the chat that was asking about resources for getting further information, perhaps some books or some references that would be on this particular subject. Do you have any suggestions, Georgia, for places to go for further information, or websites or any kind of information hubs?
I don't know there's so many resources, and I've got masses and masses on my computer, and if there's something very specific, so if it's women's economic empowerment, I've got a really nice short document that describes it really well and can be used for designing approaches. But if it's more wider on gender, but in particular about COVID, there's an awful lot going on at the moment with organisations producing resources. So I can share those as well, because I keep being sent them. So there's an international centre for research on women, which is really useful on that. But there are also Amnesty International and several other organisations have been publishing things.
And in terms of the training, if people could, I've seen a couple of comments in regarding the training. If people can put their expressions of interest in the chat, if they would like to pursue any further training, then we'll try and organise or have that discussion about how that can be facilitated. Either with Georgia or with some internal training ourselves, or perhaps it's something that we need to acquire funding for, or stop campaigning, or speaking to other members of the party to make sure that we have that support for what we think we might need in terms of skills and training. We do have a 5-minute session at the end, which is ideally going through a skills audit of where we think we are resourcing and where we are lacking in terms of our skills. Saying yes please to training there from Ray. So if people can make their comments in the side chat, then that will be followed up on, and then we will make sure that is taken forward. Do we have any other questions for Georgia regarding the training issue? So Richard Erskine, going for Julia first, and then Caroline, and then I think another page.
Hello, it was just note again, coming from an area of ignorance, some good introductory reading on this whole area. Where do we start? Any good ideas?
Is it because it seems overwhelming at the minute with such a lot of information? Well, Georgia mentioned.
So yeah.
Georgia mentioned a document, so we'll share that in the chat, and we'll share that with the minutes afterwards. But if you have any brief links to books that we could be looking at this point.
Yeah, I think if it depends exactly what you're looking for. So are you looking for a general on gender equality across the world, or is it, health and gender equality, or is it to do with COVID?
Well, I'm not a professional at all in anything, really. So it's stuff that would be a good way of me maybe helping other people get into the right directions.
Okay.
Within the party. I mean, I hold the position of coordinator within my local party. But how I can best help people who are interested to guide them into the right directions and stuff like that. So if I have a good sort of overall picture, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Again.
it might be a nice idea for us to actually develop a little introductory PowerPoint or something, because that, you know, people could use to send out information, like really, you know, with maybe some global data on it and local data, and, you know, that you can have as a resource. Because I don't know if I don't know about you, but I hardly meet anyone who plows through long documents anymore. So
bullet points was good. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think also we can perhaps cultivate a crib sheet of sort of synopses of some of these books, if that would be useful to people as a basic introduction, just to kind of get people up to speed on various issues. Did I see a hand up from?
Yeah, we've got Caroline is wanting to ask a question.
Oh, sorry, Caroline. Yes.
Someone else. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, as long as it's on this issue. Thank you, Caroline. Yes.
I don't know which Caroline you mean.
Caroline Russell.
Okay.
Caroline
had my
Russell,
hand up on the participants.
Sorry, Caroline.
If you're using the participants function, there are several hands up there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Caroline Russell, then Caroline New. Thank you.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you, Georgia. That was a really great talk. And I just wanted to say Green Party Women historically held training sessions, which obviously at the moment we can't do because we're in lockdown, but we can do it by Zoom, where women who are members of the party kind of worked to enable women who weren't currently standing for leadership positions either in their local party or standing for external election, and it was all about empowering, encouraging people to participate and step forward. And I think that's one of the things that I've missed most since the Green Party Women emails disappeared. It's you know, having that sense of solidarity between women in the party, enabling other people to come forward and step into positions. And I certainly would never have become a councillor in 2014 if it hadn't been for working through Green Party Women. So I think, you know, the importance of getting a Slack group set up, you know, as soon as you do that and get that sent out to us all, I think that would really make a big difference in terms of this whole agenda of empowering people to step up into leadership roles.
Absolutely agree, and we are working hard on doing that right now. Caroline New.
Hi, thanks, Georgia. That was really good and interesting. There is the Green Party of England and Wales has a COP26 steering group, which is working with the Scottish Greens and has just written to the Global Greens, asking them about what they think are the most important issues at COP26 and trying to get some sort of agreed manifesto. I'm wondering, what do you think, how could we incorporate some of what you've been telling us into the demands for COP26?
Wow, that's a massive question. I would really love to know what's been discussed already and what some of the challenges are. But I definitely think the issue about global inequalities and us starting, us in the north who are the huge, emissions, we're the countries that are emitting most, and yet we're the ones with the loudest voices that run the agendas, and we're not the ones suffering mostly from this climate emergency. So, rebalancing that and bringing out the voices of others who are actually living this. I mean, in Nigeria, they used to have 2 rainy seasons, and now they only have 1. So that means only 1 harvest. So there's less, food, and there's areas that are really, really, drought affected and flood affected at the same time. So, there's drastic climate issues. So I would definitely push that, and the whole economics area. I think it's just because I'm a bit obsessed with it at the moment, but how do we get people all over the world to agree that growth can't be an objective. It can be something that happens, and for some countries still there has to be a lot of economic growth, but we cannot make that our primary objective. It has to be well-being and sustainability, well-being for the planet, animals, and humans. So it's so how can we articulate that and get that really fully on the agenda globally? Because we're not going to be able to crack anything unless we get there. And also, I mean, the issue of financial services globally, I mean, it's a massive issue. Anyway, I could go on. I could.
So thank you very much for your comments. Cara, did you have something to briefly? I'm getting away from Loppy, is that correct? We are running, if it's short, no, it's fine. Okay. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. Thank you very much, Georgia.
Thank you.
If we can pull together a crib sheet, we'll include some other references on some other books and some other literature reviews, perhaps, so that we have a sort of a single resource that we can then post into the Slack group as a, I don't want to use the word idiot's guide, it's quite a pejorative term, but in terms of a sort of a brief introduction to some of these very complex issues. Because obviously coming at it from a perspective where we live in a completely different culture, this can be, first of all, a cultural barrier as well as an information barrier. And we're trying to break down as many barriers as we can by providing as much information as transparently as possible to our members. So I'm going to invite Andrea Carey, who is the organizer on the 50-50 Parliament campaign, which leads nicely from the empowerment of women into what we can actually do to get more women elected in our own parliament. So Andrea, can we unmute Andrea, please?
If I can find her.
I'm here.
Yeah. What page are you on?
She's on Les Fuller.
I'm on Les Fuller.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Well, you're unmuted.
Fantastic. Welcome, Andrea. So if you can give us a brief introduction about your role in the campaign, how long it's been going, a little bit of background, and then we can open up the discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Frances Scott is the director of 50-50, and it's a non-partisan campaign. Basically, the idea is to get 50% of the MPs in Parliament women. At the moment, we've only got 220 MPs who are women. So we've still got a long way to go. There are only 12 extra women that were voted in 2019. I took this on from Gulnar Hasnain, who asked me to take over in January. And the idea is that within the Green Party that I try and sort of develop a point of contact and support and a buddy system for people. So we've gone from Georgia's fantastic talk about economic empowerment to political empowerment, which is where I'm coming from. So, and what's really interesting today and what's great is that quite a few of the women that so far have taken part in this meeting have actually been, including Georgia, were candidates in the last election. So this morning I worked out how many female candidates we had, and it's 182 women stood for the Green Party in the last election. So almost half, not quite. We could have done with about 40 more, but we're getting there. And I think part of that is to do with some of the things that we've touched upon today. You know, a lot of it is down to resources. Women have got fantastic resources within themselves, their life experience. Doesn't have to be their education, it could be their work, it could be anything. But sometimes it's about not knowing where to go for information and support, and how we can build upon that and how we achieve what we want to achieve. And I think that's part of the excitement I think I have about Green Party women having this opportunity to have an automatic opt-in your motion, so that we can start to organise ourselves, work together, form support networks, share information and resources. So basically at the moment we've got within the 50-50 campaign the people that have put themselves forward for support, none of those actually stood in the general election. So what I'm going to do is go to all these 182 women. I've worked out that at least 7 that have taken part in this conversation today stood, including yourself, Dawn, and Georgia and Kat, obviously Caroline Russell, Catherine Barber, Claudine as well. So what we need to do now is basically look at who within Green Party women can offer to be buddies and support, and and that support doesn't have to, it can be just emotional support, really. Somebody to speak with, to sort of see how things are going, to talk about difficulties people are encountering, but also maybe some practical advice based on experience. If especially from people like Caroline Russell, who's one of our GLA members for London-wide members in the GLA. So she's got tremendous experience, and as a counsellor as well. And we've got some other counsellors, and obviously people like Caroline Lucas and our 2 Green Lords now. All of these women need to sort of help our women get in there, get selected in order to get elected. So the 50-50 campaign, basically, if I ask people just to go to 5050, www.5050parliament.co.uk, and basically sign up to say that they're interested, because that's what we need. We need. So I need all of those people that stood to sign up, and then we can start organising, because we've got so much support. I think there's lots of people, lots of men support the campaign too, because I think there is an understanding that women have got different experience, and as Georgia said, will often recognise what's needed, especially in terms of women's issues and health issues. And if we're really going to get the support and the funding and the debate around the policy on those issues, we need to have more women in Parliament. And that's why I was very willing to sort of take over from Gulna and just see what I can do with this, and see if I can help more women stand, so that next time we have a general election, we've definitely got 50% of candidates identifying as women, and then see, in between times, what we can do in terms of starting to gather some resources, perhaps through Green Party Women. One of the things I was going to suggest was a need to get the 50-50 link up on the Green Party Women Facebook and on the website, because then it would be automatic. When people go there, they can see the campaign, they can click on it, they can read the information and see if they want to sign up to it, and get the support and help. So yes, it's sort of open to everybody in this meeting for ideas, for anyone who thinks they might like to be a buddy or just sign up to the campaign, to go onto Twitter and to follow the campaign on Twitter and retweet the Ask Her to Stand and Sign Up to Stand are the 2 hashtag links. So I'll make sure I get them all to you, Dawn, so that they can all go in the information and the minutes for this meeting. And I think that's about it, really. That's all I wanted to say on that.
So essentially, I've actioned the point about putting the links onto the website. We're getting together our social media, and obviously when we get the Slack group up and running, we can include all the documents and everything within that. I'm seeing some of the comments in the side chat bar which are referring to some of the barriers that women face, particularly bullying, which can be a problem, certainly in the local parties where women are feeling particularly disenfranchised within sort of certainly very strong or certainly very dominant male members. Do you have any suggestions about how we can tackle that at a local level regarding sort of the issues that women might have in terms of even speaking out to put themselves forward, potentially as a candidate, either as a councillor or as an MP at that local level?
Well, I think that's where the buddy system can really come into play. So one of the women I spoke to last week who didn't stand in the last election but has been thinking about it, I had a really good chat to her and suggested we looked together online at her local party, and I saw that Andrea Fries, who's already a councillor, was a very sort of strong, active woman in that particular party, and I suggested that she contact her initially and see if she could offer because this particular woman's a journalist, and she was offering to sort of maybe do blogs or articles, and I said, well, that might be a way to help support Andrea, and perhaps Andrea could support you back and you could shadow and mentor. And I think we need more things like shadowing. So shadowing of Caroline and Caroline Lucas and Caroline Russell, Sean Berry, other elected councillors, so that it takes some of the fear, and maybe sometimes women who have been out of the work area or just sort of out in terms of self-confidence, and I've been through this myself, and you spend a lot of time maybe at home with your children or child, you can think, oh my God, are they going to look at me and think I haven't done anything for a long time? Am I going to be good enough? And I think women often have those kind of thoughts, and if we've got mentoring systems in place like that, that could take away the fear. And also show everyone that, if one woman can do it, any woman can do it. So that's I think the message that we need to start sharing and supporting each other and saying, so that we make things possible, because we have got tremendous skills, resources at our fingertips, experience, information that we don't think we've got but actually would come in useful. And I think, yes, that local parties sometimes operate around pivotal people that have set them up, and then they don't really sort of make way for new people, and we need to sort of find ways to reach out and find those new people. And again, that's another reason why I support your motion for an automatic opt-in, because straight away women have got a place where they can go for resources and support and information, and could be connected directly to other women. If other women, maybe part of the membership could have, asking all of us what information, skills, experience we've got that we feel could help other women, and trying to get the Green Party women, not just a mailing list, but like a resource information list, because we've already seen today, from 3 women that, there's lots of information resources about all sorts of things that other women will be interested in. And we need to find a way to sort of have that resource open and easy access for everyone else.
And just to highlight some of the comments that are coming in the side chat, Natalie Bennett did some training in the media with the Young Greens a couple of weeks ago, and there's also been discussion about some of the training that used to be running under Generation Green, a mentoring scheme 2 years ago. Right. So again, if people are sort of following the information that's sort of going on there, I think certainly in terms of the training requirements and the mentoring, we desperately need a hub. The difficulty in where that information is placed at the minute is, obviously we've discussed previously that the Green Spaces, that is the de facto system that's being used by the party, is essentially very difficult to manoeuvre. And I certainly find as a GPEX member, it can be very difficult to find certain documents that are posted from different groups. And rather than, making things difficult by sort of posting everything there, we have to make that process very transparent. So having a Slack group with specific channels that was devoted to individual campaignings or individual resources can then serve as functionality, where we have not just a specific information resource, but that we know exactly where to find it. Because the difficulty that I've certainly had within the Green Party, and I think it's reflected by many others, is that the information is out there, but it's very difficult to find even on our own systems. And that's not a criticism of the staff who are obviously working very hard. It's sort of partly an overwhelming of the actual information, but also it needs to be monitored and sort of updated. And tidied up occasionally to make sure that we have the most vital information going forward, and that we do have adequate resources that will be effective for when we're sort of trying to sort of organise these things and trying to organise campaigns, that we're not sort of starting everything from scratch and having to aggregate all the assets from the point. So I'd like to, on that basis, open up the idea of training and the 50/50 campaign to anyone who has a question. I saw a hand raised by Emma before. Yes, Emma Bateman.
Yeah, hi. I would like to know how you address the class issue, because I'm in a very working class area. I've got loads of skeletons in my closet, and I doubt if anyone's really going to vote for me on apart from Green Party women, but so I would like to know what we're going to do about that to get more people from working class in. And I'd also say, although I've kind of stood for election unsuccessfully, what I have found quite useful is getting to know councillors in my local town council by doing other campaigns. So I think we should encourage that even if you can't get through by official standing for elections, even if you're not ready for that, I found it useful to get to know councillors on an individual level, because it's given me more confidence to be able to, even stand out on the street and give out leaflets and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's a big issue, because I definitely look at someone like me and go, I've got not the right background, I'm from working class, I've got loads of things that have gone wrong in my life and all that sort of stuff. How do we persuade people who don't fit the mould to join? That's my issue that I have.
Well, I find that really interesting, because you say you don't have the right background, but I think all those trials and tribulations and all those difficulties you've gone through and experienced actually give you a better background than an awful lot of people that don't represent people like yourself. So I think that's a starting point, is to stop saying that you don't have the right background, because it's, it should be nothing to do with background, and it's all about life experience. When you look at the majority of the people that need help and support, it's not going to be the people that often, especially in a lot of the other parties, I'm not talking about the Green Party now, but in the other parties, a lot of our politicians, they don't actually represent the people that need the most help. And that's another issue. So it's about I think some of this is also for all of us that are active in whatever way we're active within the Green Party, to keep a lookout for people who are already out in the community doing stuff. Like you say, it doesn't even have to be part of a campaign. It could be just, somebody that's taken on a responsibility, I don't know, within a school or a church or a local organisation, and actually encouraging them to join with us if they haven't already joined a party, or even talking to them about that. So I've always been in favour of trying to find people in the community and say to them, why don't you stand? Have you thought about joining the Green Party and things like that? So that's another aspect of what we can do, is to really broaden out the base of people that we've got that want to come through and stand up. And I would say to you, don't let anything you've been through or any feelings you have about your background put you off from standing forward, because, it's, I come from a sort of a mixed background, in the sense that, at one point in my life, I grew up on a sort of one of the worst housing estates in Basingstoke. So, but that's actually made me want to stand up for people who need help and support. Don't let anything like that put you off. So I would say to you, use the strength of everything you've been through as your knowledge and experience, where you can help other people that are going through the same thing, and put yourself forward.
I'd like to echo the comments that were made earlier by Georgia, who's just given a thumbs up there, reiterating the point that women often vastly underestimate underestimate their skills, and men vastly overestimate their skills. If anyone was in any doubt of that, to look at some of the recent footage of Donald Trump, who has been advocating injecting injecting things and UV light as a leader of the free world. So in terms of a skills-based level, Emma, you are vastly overqualified in that respect. Does anyone have any questions for Andrea before we sort of move to the break? I'll make a quick scan through regarding the 50-50 campaign, the links about class barriers, any other barriers regarding childcare. Actually, that might be interesting in terms of how we can make accommodations for women, and particularly regarding childcare barriers. Could you possibly answer that?
Yeah, again, we need to think about sort of what time meetings are held. In terms of some of the voluntary work I do, I work for a neighbourhood forum. I persuade the forum to often hold meetings at weekends, so that, you know, we can have a meeting maybe at lunchtime, provide a bit of food, and also a place for children to be next to the meeting as well. If women need to bring children with them, you know, especially if they're either a sole parent, or maybe, you know, their partner is busy doing something else or whatever. So, you know, I think that's really important. My daughter's come along to quite a few of my meetings and she's just sat there colouring or on her iPad. And I think we need to, you know, it can be very difficult if our local Green Party meetings are always in the evening, which might be a time when women are putting their kids to bed or something else. So that automatically excludes them. And then there's also the issue not just about working class women, but women who have impairments, and also women from black and minority ethnic backgrounds as well. And again, I think that's part of the sort of reaching out in terms of you know, churches or different community organisations as well. You know, if there's you know, a whole range of different, we all of us are generally within our local communities have got a whole range of different community organisations that represent different sectors of the population, that if we, you know, we wanted to sort of give ourselves a task for this year, could say, oh, I'm going to contact such and such organisations, see, you know, go along and see if I can meet some interesting women there and see if I can encourage them to join up. That's one of the ways we could get more women from different unrepresented sectors into our Green Party membership, but also into sort of the stream of putting themselves forward to be on the, you know, on the sort of voting for councillors or for MPs, yeah, and for GLA and things. So.
Final question from Julia, and then that will be the end of the session, unless anyone has any. Julia.
Hi, thanks, that was really interesting. You basically actually addressed what I was going to ask just now, because I was going to say, yeah, just to echo what Emma said, that so many women have these additional barriers, that I was wondering if Green Party women or if 50-50 had special trainings for, you know, different women facing intersectional barriers, like special training for disabled women that will face different barriers to non-disabled women and women of colour. So maybe that's something Green Party women could look at, or if that's something maybe you already do.
Do you know, I need to find out a bit more about Equal Power, because it's the organisation working with the 50-50 campaign, and they apparently are going to be putting on training sessions. And as you say, I mean, some of the things you've just raised there are really important for me as well, to make sure that we've got equality in terms of opportunity for women, just to, you know, sort of put their foot in the water and see if it's for them. So I'll follow that up with the 50-50 campaign and see what they're planning. Obviously at the moment with COVID-19 it makes everything quite difficult, but I mean there's nothing to stop them sort of planning a programme going into the future and to seeing how that might work even online like this, doing a training session, because I too would be very keen to see more disabled women, and as I say, especially women from black and other ethnic groups represented. I haven't. It took me hours actually to go through all the women who stood in the last election. There wasn't a handy list, so I had to go to the candidate website. It took me 5.5 hours to go through everyone and print them all off. But at a guess, having gone through them all, I'd say probably less than 10% were from black and minority ethnic groups. Of those that I had to make a judgment on based on photographs, if you see what I mean, because there's no sort of information there about that either. It was just the women themselves and sort of what they wrote about themselves and why they were standing, which is really interesting. So it gave me a really good sense of all the resources that we have, which are fantastic. I have to say, we've got such amazing women, and that's why we've got to find a way to women to shine their light and be seen, not just always behind the scenes. And that's why I'm very keen to work on this campaign and bring more women forward.
Absolutely agree, and thank you very much for your contribution.